Okay, folks, welcome back. It's time for a super quick speed run. We're going to be setting up Coder, Code Server, which is basically Visual Studio Code in a VM. So this is a great way to set up sort of a remote environment where you can do all your coding through a web browser. This is especially handy if you're in an environment where you can't install things locally on your laptop or desktop for whatever reason. So let's get into it. First thing I'm going to do from the AWS EC2 console here is set up a new EC2 instance. So we'll do that. We'll go to Launch Instances. I'm going to call it Coder Box because why not? We are going to use a ARM instance. We'll use a T4G. So we're going to use a Graviton instance. These are really probably the best choice in terms of price performance on AWS. We'll go with a large. That should be plenty big enough. You could probably use a smaller type actually, but I want to make sure performance is good. Even at this size, things are pretty cheap. You'll see that standard Linux on demand here, less than 7 cents an hour for that T4G.large. Operating system, we're going to go with Ubuntu 24. So again, just to go over the setup again real quick here, we're calling our instance Coder Box. We've chosen Ubuntu. We're using Ubuntu 24. And we're going to be using a T4G.large instance type. I need to set an SSH key pair so that I'll be able to log into the instance. I have one already. If you don't already have one, you would need to set it up by clicking on Create Key Pair. I'm lucky I already have a key. Same thing with the network settings. You need to already have a VPC available. I do, so I'm going to choose my public VPC, but I don't want to use 2C. I want to use the subnet in 2A. So let's go over there. Public US West 2A, and I do want this instance to be in a public subnet. I'm going to set it up so that I can access it securely through a web browser. I'll be setting up SSL and all that, but in order to do that, I do need the instance to have a public IP. I'll give it both an IPv4 and an IPv6 address, and then I need to choose a security group. At minimum, I need a security group that has ports 80 and 443 open. I already have a group set up that does that, which is web. I need to choose a disk size. Let's go with 64 gigabytes. That should be plenty. I'll keep the default disk type, which is GP3. We'll go into advanced, open up the settings for the root volume here, and I'm going to encrypt it. I like to encrypt all my EBS volumes with a key. EBS key is the key that I've got set up in Oregon, which is the region I'm operating in right now, so we'll use that one. And now we're pretty much done. There's one more thing I might want to do. I actually want to attach a instance profile here. The one I'm going to use is Power User. I actually use Coder to do a lot of Amazon testing and development. So I have this instance profile set up that has pretty broad permissions so that I can use most AWS services from the CLI in the Coder environment. Okay, so I've now set up everything. I just click on Launch Instance. Once I do that, the instance will come up. And because of the fairly open IAM instance profile we've attached, Systems Manager should work for us out of the box, which is great. It means I do not need to SSH into this instance from the local command line here on my laptop. Instead, once the instance is running, I'll be able to just click on this connect button here. And from there, I'll be able to use the Systems Manager sort of built-in virtual terminal to connect the instance directly, which means I don't need to download my SSH key or do any of that setup. It should all just work in the browser. So let's try that. We'll click connect, and we're not going to use EC2 Instance Connect or SSH Client or Serial Console. We want Session Manager. Session Manager. And again, we might have to wait a little bit here. The instance is probably still booting up. Once that's done, I can go ahead and refresh this page, and then I'll be able to click on connect and connect up to the instance and actually get started setting up Coder. So hopefully we'll be able to do that very, very soon. So let's see. Still not ready. So I'll come back once we're ready. Okay, great. So after a short wait, the button has now turned a beautiful Amazon orange, so I'll go ahead and click on that. It will open up a new tab, and that will open up the Systems Manager Session Manager. So I'm not sure if I was clear about that before. Systems Manager does a lot of other things. It can do automated patching and all kinds of other stuff. The specific tool we're using is the Session Manager, which lets us get a shell on our instance. And by the way, this does also work for instances running Windows Server. It will drop you into a PowerShell session. So this isn't a Linux only thing. I'm going to switch over to being the Ubuntu user with sudo su Ubuntu. So we've done that. We are now ready to do, of course, the standard update dance that you always do anytime you're setting up on a brand new Ubuntu machine. It's always a good idea to do this. I'm sorry, I made a typo there. Okay, do the upgrades. There's a couple of little things that need to be upgraded there. Once I'm done with my upgrades, I'll probably want to restart just to make sure that they all get applied. It looked like there may have been some system tool or kernel updates in the packages we just pulled. To be honest, I did not check that carefully. I have a lot of faith in the Ubuntu team, so I tend to expect upgrades and updates to just work. And so often I say yes probably earlier than I should. So anyway, I've just sort of default agreed to this upgrade, and we'll see what gets updated as we go along here. Ah, yes, indeed, you can see a new initram fs image is being generated, right? So see that there? So that means we probably have a new kernel that we need to run from, so we're gonna have to restart. Before I do that, I'm gonna do auto clean and auto remove to get rid of any package cache, unused packages, all that. And then we'll do reboot. And when we come back in just a second, we will be able to go ahead and actually start installing Coder. So we've gotten through step one, which was just getting the instance fully updated and ready to go. Okay, so after waiting a minute, I'm going to click on connect again. All right, the connect button is orange. We're ready to connect in. We open up Systems Manager, Session Manager one more time. Same routine. We're going to switch user to Ubuntu. Okay. By the way, that starts out in the home folder for the Systems Manager agent. We actually don't want to be there, so I always type cd to take myself back to Ubuntu's home directory for the Ubuntu user. We can now actually start fetching the handy auto install script. I'm going to just copy paste that in. This command and all the other setup steps are actually documented in a blog post that I've linked to in the description, so you can copy paste them in too, rather than having to type all that out. What you'll see is I've appended dry run to the end of that just to see what will happen, and you'll see it is giving me a list of the actions it's going to perform. All of that stuff looks pretty safe to me. So we now repeat all of that again, but this time without any of those extra flags. And once we do that, the install will take place on its own. The script will handle it all for us. And then all we need to do is make sure that code server starts at boot time. So of course there's a systemctl command for this, sudo systemctl enable, enable right now, -- now. Code server is the name of the service, and we'll run it as the current user. We want to run it under the current user. So we've done that. It's now ready to run. Okay, so I've cleared the screen, sorry. Everything is set up. Coder's ready to run, but we're still missing one big piece, which is that we don't have a good secure way to get in through a web browser. To solve that, we're going to need some type of a proxy application. A lot of people like to use Nginx. What the Coder docs actually recommend is something called Caddy, which I've used just because of setting up Coder. I actually didn't know about this before I read the Coder docs. Very handy tool. Again, the steps to install are in the blog. I'm just going to paste them in here to save time. Very, very simple setup, actually even simpler than Nginx, and it will go and fetch an SSL certificate for us and everything. So just follow along with those install steps. Just add the repo and then run sudo apt update, sudo apt install caddy like I've just done. When that completes, there will be a so-called caddy file under /etc/caddy. That is what we are going to update next. So I'm going to do vim etc caddy file. If you're not familiar with Vim, I've covered it in a couple of my videos at this point, but I find that some people are new to Vim and it can be hard to use if you're new. Let me just give you the ultimate super fast crash course. So welcome to Vim. We're in the Vim text editor now. If you want to leave Vim, you have to enter a command. You can't use Control-C or Control-Z like you would use to sleep or cancel a shell job. You would have to type a colon and then Q. So again, just to make that clear, colon and then Q. You can see I have typed it. It's down there in the corner, way in the corner. I then hit enter and I've quit, right? If I want to go back in, just repeat the Vim command, I'm in. Right now, when you first open Vim, you are not in editing mode. You're in, I believe they call it command mode, which is where you're supposed to enter things like shortcuts to move you around to different lines. You can enter commands to turn line numbering on and off. You can write, quit, do all that stuff. Command mode. We're in command mode right now, but I can do all kinds of stuff in command mode except directly edit the file. If I want to insert new content or edit character by character, I need to hit the I key. And the I key will put me into insert mode. Although in this case, you'll see it's not going to work for me because I am in read-only mode. That was because I should have opened the file with sudo. It's a protected file, right? So we'll go back, update our command a little bit to say sudo vim etc caddy file. Great. Now when I hit I, you'll see, if you look very carefully in the lower corner there, lower left, it says insert. So I'm now ready to actually go in and modify the file. And what I'm supposed to do here is replace the contents of the file with something new that corresponds to the domain where my EC2 instance is running. I skipped over some steps. You can look at previous videos to see what they were, but essentially I've got my AWS account set up so that when I name a new EC2 instance, the instance gets a name that looks like this automatically. So instance name.jeremypeterson.com, right? So they all end up getting a fully qualified domain name like that. They all get a domain name. Instance name.jeremypeterson.com. All right, anyway, I now need to throw that into this caddy file. So we're gonna do, well, what did I call my instance, right? Better double check, needs to match exactly. We called the instance CoderBox. So for me, it's gonna be, we are going to do coderbox.jeremypeterson.com. And then we want reverse proxy 127.0.0.1 on port 8080, and then close that out. And then what we need to do with this stuff here is comment it out. We don't need any of that. So we've now updated caddy so that it's going to be forwarding stuff that's coming in for coderbox.jeremypeterson.com from the internet to this local address, this local address where the code server is running. Again, we're going to have to enter command mode. By the way, if you're in insert mode, to enter command mode, to go back to command mode, you just hit the escape key. That's what I just did. I hit the escape key, and then of course, to write and quit, which is the equivalent of saving and exiting, you do colon and then WQ, and of course you're gonna have to hit enter after that. So I'll do all that as well. Colon, WQ. If you look in the lower left, you can see that happening. It's way down there. Colon, WQ, enter. Okay, we've now saved that file. We do sudo systemctl reload caddy, and that should restart the service. And it's actually going to go fetch its own SSL cert for us and everything, which is pretty cool. So if I now go to coderbox.jeremypeterson.com, there we are, we're on code server, and look at that. It's connected securely over HTTPS. I just need to figure out the password. You might be wondering what the password is because we didn't set one. Well, Coder set one for us automatically, and it's hiding in the config.yaml file that Coder set up. So we need to locate that. I believe it's going to be in config. Yeah, there it is. So if we go into, it's a hidden directory, cd.config. We go in there, and I do ls. You'll see we have a directory called code server. Go into code server, ls again, config.yaml. And if I use cat to print the contents of that, you'll see one of the fields in there is a password. It's sort of like a token, right? And all I then need to do is go back over here, paste that in. That is indeed the password for the code server login. And once I've typed that in, I'll be presented with Visual Studio Code in a web browser. And there we go. Now we're ready to start using VS Code. I can install all of the usual VS Code plugins that I like. So anything I want to install, I can just fetch from the, I should call them extensions, sorry. I can fetch any of the VS Code extensions that I like through the extension browser, all that good stuff. I can open a folder, I can create a new file. Obviously, it's going to default to my current home directory. I'm running this again as the Ubuntu user, so by default, we're in /home/Ubuntu. If I switch directories, you will notice that the browser sort of refreshes. Code server does that on its own every time you close out a repository or open a new folder, so don't be alarmed. It just refreshes the web interface when you do that. If I hit, I believe, command, let's see. If I go here to the file menu, new text file, right? It looks like it would be Control Option N would do a new file. Yep, so I've got new file. Command S would, of course, save myfile.py. Let's make it a Python file, right? I can then do, a little Python program. We'll just do print hello world, right? The ultimate Python code. If I want, I can open up a shell, just like I could do in VS Code locally. And you'll see I'm Ubuntu, I'm the Ubuntu user. So I can do all the things that the Ubuntu user has the permission to do. I can install anything I want. I can run anything I want. So for instance, maybe I want to run myfile.py and it says hello world. So save files, edit files, open GitHub repos, use the command line, all that wonderful stuff you'd normally do in your development environment. I can do all of that through the code server interface here. And it is essentially just VS Code in a web browser. So all the stuff I'm used to in VS Code will work in here. Pretty sweet, right? Pretty cool. And that's all there is to getting this set up. I hope that was useful, and I'll see you around.